guys, and welcome to a new video on Sono's life. And as you can tell, this is slightly different today. You've got two videos in like 2 days. And obviously the last one I did was the New Japan Tanahashi's Homecoming with a little look at the Best of Super Junior Tag League. So make sure to watch that. But as you can tell from the title, this is a little bit different. So, like last month, I decided to take a trip down memory lane and I resubscribed to Wrestle Universe. And if anyone who doesn't know, Wrestle Universe is like a streaming service for a ton of wrestling promotions. I actually think it's one of the best value for money, but for me, more importantly, it has two of my OG promotions. It has Tokyo Joshi and DDT. And today, so this is November 3rd, but I'm going to post it on November 4th, and they had the big DDT Ultimate Party show. Now this is like a very big show and it's happened for quite a few years actually. And it was the first DDT show I've watched live in like ages. But I thought I'd do a quick review because why not? And actually there is a familiar face. So let's get going. And yeah, I want to try these out with, like I say, DDT, Tokyo Joshi. There's a Noah Junior Festival coming up. So yeah, let's see how it goes. So let's get going. Unlike New Japan, there is kind of not really an order to these matches. So for example, we started off with the Sanshiro Takagi, who he runs DDT. His return match, and he was facing, I guess you could call him the young lion, Hinata Kasai. It's not really as traditional, the young lion system in DDT, in the sense that they've got like a certain moveset, they've got a certain outfit. It's more that they will, again, I guess, like New Japan, be in the earlier matches. This was a great match, a lot of fun. Sanshiro Takagi, he must be in his like 50s or 60s by now, but he is in great shape. So this was a really fun match. Obviously, Takagi picked up the win. We then had a 6-man tag. So these had some of my faves in it. So Hiroshima, who is 51, but the man looks in his late 30s. Toru Owashi, hilarious. Naomi Yoshimura, and they were facing Rukia Kawamatsu and one of my OG, and you'll get this quite a lot actually, one of my OG husbands, Soma Takao. Now this is kind of your low-key, high-key, like babyface versus babyface match. There's a lot of funny moments in this. For example, Takao has this thing that he pretends to take his shirt off, but he doesn't. He teased this about 2 times. Owashi is very funny because he's a bit on the older side and the bigger side, but he likes to do like lucha stuff. And obviously Hiroshima is just amazing. If you've never seen a Hiroshima match, he's like, I guess, the Tanahashi of DDT in some ways, but he's very good at, like, he can balance the amazing matches, but he's also very good at comedy. Like, I watched one of their past shows at a beer garden thing, and there was like a fatal 4-way, and each time music came, they had to drink beer or tequila. So yeah, and this match was a lot of fun. The team of Hiroshima, Owashi, and Yoshimachi got the win. It was just a common multi-man tag, so yeah, it was fine. We then had another multi-man tag, so we had Yuki Ishida, Kazuma Sumi, and Kumadori. So Kumadori is amazing, masked man, phenomenal. The other two are on the younger side, and then they faced, I guess, I don't know if you're watching this as DDT fans or if you're a New Japan fan, I can only call them the DDT House of Torture and Damnation. However, they've been around for much longer, and I've always joked they're like my spirit animals. So here we had Hideki Okatani, who, which is weird, the last time I saw him, well, I watched DDT, he was part of Eruption with Sakiaka and Higuchi with red hair. Now he's full on emo boy. MJ Paul, who was mad poorly when I stopped, and Demuth and Illusion. Oh, I also missed in the other team, Daichi Sato was in it. This had a lot of shenanigans. It was your classic, like, heels versus baby faces, a lot of cheating, a lot of fun as well. The younger baby faces were doing all they can to hit back at the dastardly heels. Damnation is very funny because I think I used to joke that they're just like a bunch of emos, but they actually are very funny. They're a very close-knit faction. So yeah, this was good. Again, unsurprisingly, Damnation got the win, but it was a nice match. We then got to a more stereotypical DDT match with a fatal 4-way, fatal 4-way, fatal 5-way. I'm going to have to count the number of participants. For the DDT Extreme Championship. You all know, you've heard of the championship, very iconic. Everyone and anyone has won it, except me. And we had Toy, he's very young but very good. Akito, Super Sasadango Machine, Hirata, and Antonio Honda. The stipulation, Matsui, the referee, was blindfolded. Now, yeah, this was actually the only insane match of the entire card, but it was insane on the best levels. The 4 older veteran guys decided that Toy was going to be their target, and you can understand that when Matsui is blindfolded, this makes everything hard. He has to feel the pinfalls, which makes it hard because after every count he has to touch the bodies to make it do. Generally, he doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know if there's any cheating, and there was a hell of a lot of cheating, again, aimed at Toy. There was massive weapons, a massive claw that Antonio Honda decided to put on Toy's lower regions. They were really trying to make it hard, and then at one point, Matsui was down, and then they had to bring another referee with the help of Harashima. And this caused so much chaos. Like, at one point, the new ref was counting Matsui as if he was a competitor, while everyone else was just lying around. And hilariously enough, despite Toy being like the target of the entire one, he ended up getting the pin over Hirata to win the Extreme Championship. So that was a lot of fun. A nice break in the card to just give some classic DDT. But like I said, DDT has this, but it also balances with very good wrestling. We then had a 5th match, which was another tag match. So we had a Noah present, so Hayata and Junta Miyawaki, with one of my OG faves, Tetsuya Endo, who was part of the DDT roster, but I'm not sure if he's permanently in Noah or if this is an excursion. And they were facing Jun Akiyama, Aoki, and Koroku. Koroku's again on the younger side. These were really fun interactions between the guys. So we had like Aoki with Hayata. Endo was facing some of his former, I guess, senpais in the sense of like Aoki and Akiyama. Akiyama's like a legend. It was just a lot of fun. Nothing really major happened, but it was a great match. We then had a special singles match, and this had Amakusa facing the leader of Damnation, and this man, he was and probably still is my spirit animal, Daisuke Sasaki of Damnation. I mentioned earlier they were a bit of like House of Torture because Sasaki was accompanied to the ring by the other members of Damnation, and they did their utmost to make life hard for Amakusa, who is, again, a legendary wrestler in himself. There was so much going on. Actually, a lot of good wrestling. This is the one thing that kind of tears Damnation away from, like, House of Torture. They can wrestle by themselves. Like, the majority of the match, Sasaki was doing well. Sasaki's a very strong wrestler. I guess, he might not look like it because of, like, everything he does. He's a very strong junior wrestler. And this worked perfectly with Amakusa. And they have very good wrestling chemistry, as told by, like, after the match when Amakusa got the win, is that they wrestled 20 years ago. Their careers are sort of intertwined in, like, the weirdest way. But Sasaki gladly accepted the handshake and they walked off. And actually, this is the thing with DDT. Yes, Damnation are heels in the sense, but there's no real, like, they've sort of got rid of the whole factions thing, which I remember when I was there, that used to be really important. We had, like, Disaster Box, the 37 Camino, which I think is still a thing. And we've still got a few more here and there, but yeah. The lines are a lot more blurred in, like, wrestlers and factions and allegiances, so that makes it a lot more fun. The next match was something a little bit different. So we had a triple threat match for the Tag Team Championships, which saw Yuki Ino and Yukio Nayo, who are the champions, facing Mount Cannon, who they're with Kimihiro, who's like their hype man, facing the female team of Chihiro, Hashimoto, and Yu. Now this is something that's very different from DDT compared to any pro wrestling, just generally I guess a lot of professional wrestling companies, is their intergender matches. They have it not often, because for example, there's not been, I think, a permanent member of the DDT roster who's a woman since Saki Akai left a few years ago. I loved her, by the way. But they will have shows with Tokyo Joshi wrestlers. Makito, before she left Tokyo Joshi, was a mainstay. She did a lot of shows, actually, on DDT. But they seem to push away any thoughts of gender. Now, here you had, the champions are very big and muscly. Yu and Hashimoto are very muscly, so is Kanon. And then you had Mao, who sort of balanced it. He was obviously in the Best of Super Junior this year. He's a bit more smaller, a bit more agile. He's all about the speed and the charisma. This was hard-hitting and everything. It was sort of like an elimination match. And we had so many different styles and characters within them, and all interacting with each other regardless of gender. So obviously the women were fighting with the men, you had the smaller guys with the bigger guys. It was so dynamic and fun. In the end, surprisingly, Kanon and Mao got the win. I'm really excited for that. I love those two as a team. Like, they're actually hilarious. And it was quite surprising because obviously they would have been the smaller team. So yeah, that was a hell of a lot of fun. We then got to, I guess the main reason a lot of you are probably watching this, that there was a special singles match between New Japan's Zack Sabre Jr. and DDT's Chris Brooks. These two have a history dating decades, dating countries, spanning the world, obviously both born and raised in the UK independent scene, and they showed that in the VT before. They've been doing it with the build-up. This match was probably one of my favourites of the year. I'm going to say this right now just because it was meant something to me, but it was the perfect combination of everything I love about pro wrestling. To start with, they each came out with their own hype guys. It was nice to see Fujita in the corner of Zack. But immediately you could see this tension between the two. Whether it was sexual tension or actual tension, I'll let you decide. But they started wrestling and it was pure masterpiece. Yes, it's common that in 99% of the matches that Zack has, he is the star submission wrestler. However, Chris also trained in the UK, also very skilled at the mat, and knows Zack so well. So he was having submissions on himself, which is very surprising. Chris was perfectly reversing Zack's attempts. They were, even though there was a bit of a height difference, they were sort of neck on neck, because similarly, I think they both have very similar frames. That they're both quite tall and quite, not gangly, but like they're on the smaller side considering how tall they are. But there was a lot of power. But what I love the most about this match, and I don't know how DDT and Wrestle Universe works with their screenshots, so I don't know if I'm going to put any in. But there was a lot of humour in it first. So during the match, Zack was getting all up in Matsui's face, who's the referee. And then at one point, when it looked like Zack was close to pinning Chris, Matsui's hand couldn't do it. And then suddenly, a very emotional and romantic music montage of photos of Matsui and Chris came up. Insane. And then when Matsui was down, Chris brought the people that he had brought down, including Antonio Honda. And then as Honda went to hit Zack with a chair, a musical montage hit of photos of Zack Sabre Jr. and Antonio Honda. And then Zack and Honda kissed. That was like the really nice balance of like what I'm saying what DDT is. It's a mix of amazing wrestling but also a bit of light-hearted humour. Because then straight after that it went straight back into amazing wrestling. There was amazing reversals, it was just full of passion, and I think the story of like how long Zack and Chris have known each other added to that. In the end, Zack got the win, but the ending after the match was really emotional because Zack was crying. I don't think I've ever seen Zack get this emotional. He was hugging, like holding Chris's hand. There was also another kiss. Yes, Zack Sabre Jr. kissed 2 men in one match. New Japan needs to step up its game. But it was really emotional. And as much as I love New Japan, sometimes I need light-hearted stuff. So yeah, this was the reason and I couldn't have been happier. We then had another tag match, and this had Higuchi and Masada facing Kaisai Takechi, who is an idol, but he's also now a wrestler, and IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, fresh off his defense against Hiroki Goto, Takeshita. It's quite funny because everyone says Takeshita and Masada look alike, and to see them in the ring was funny. It's nice to see Takeshita with the belt back home in his home promotion. DDT was where I first found Takeshita, like 5-6 years ago. I used to compare him to Okada. I was like, yeah, Takeshita, he's like the Okada of DDT, and now he is known to everyone in the world as one of the best. It makes me emotional. But this match was great. We obviously saw Masada trying to square up to IWGP Heavyweight Champion, but Higuchi was doing the same. There was so much animosity between the two teams because they just want to one-up each other, because the team of Takeshita and Takechi actually had gold. So obviously Takeshita has the IWGP belt, and Takechi is actually he's the trios champion. They had a really good defense actually a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So yeah, this match was a lot of fun. Nice to see Takeshita back. In the end, Takeshita and Takeshi actually got the win by pinning Masada, but it was great. We then got to the main event, and there's another New Japan Preds of sorts, because it was a title versus title match, which saw the KOD Openweight Champion, I believe that was Yuki Ueno, one of my OG husbands, facing the Universal Championship champion, and that is Minoru Suzuki. That's another thing that's been nice since I've got DDT back, is being able to watch Suzuki and shouting Kaze Ninare. They have been feuding even before I started rewatching it. They've been wrestling. They wrestled in the KOD trios match. There was so much going on, and these two couldn't be more different. Suzuki, we know him, mat-based wrestler, very strong, very aggressive. Yuki Ueno is a lot more of like a high flyer athletic. Like, I've always said that I'd really like him to be in a Best of Super Junior. However, while Ueno is normally quite happy and positive, he perfectly adapted to Murder Grandad because he knew that he could not give him a single step. This was fast, energetic, very, very intense and brutal. Obviously dictated by Murder Grandad himself, Suzuki. It was in the ring, it was outside, there was submissions, there was high flying, there was jumps. Like, at one point, when I was in this submission by Suzuki, who's obviously one of the OG submission specialists, for what seemed like 5 minutes. But he had this will and he kept fighting and he had the crowd on his side. And I can't actually remember how long the match, it felt like forever, just because, not in a bad way, but in a sense of like, oh my god, these two are going at it. Ueno got the win. He pinned Minoru Suzuki and he is now double champion. It was, like I said, I've been watching DDT I think for like a month now. This is when I subscribed to it, but this is the first show I managed to watch live. Well, I watched most of it. I ended up going at 6 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. But it made me realise why I loved DDT so much. It was similar with Tokyo Joshi. It's amazing wrestling with such bright and interesting characters, but it's not as rigid and as serious as New Japan. There is a lot of lightheartedness, like Matsui, like a referee being blindfolded and weapons, and the mix of humour in such a high caliber match like Zack Sabre Jr. versus Chris Brooks. I don't know how many of these reviews I'm going to do, you guys let me know, but I'm going to be carrying watching DDT, no matter how little time I have already with everything going on. I'm so happy to find DDT again, and so let me know your thoughts. I don't know how much reach this is going to get and whether all the New Japan subscribers are going to be like, Sonal, what are you doing? Or I'm going to bring a new set in and try and persuade you to watch DDT. I really think just because there is New Japan presence here in the last 3 matches, so Suzuki, Takeshita, Zack, is a show definitely worth watching if you can. As is DDT in general, if you want a bit of a break from the seriousness and sometimes the doom and gloom of like New Japan and the fans. So yeah, let me know your thoughts if you watched the show. If you haven't, based on what I've said in the review, let me know in the comments on social media at wrestling_chat. Obviously, I had my New Japan review. We are going to come up to like World Tag League. There's a special House of Torture show coming up. So make sure to hit like, share and subscribe. We're on the road to Wrestle Kingdom, but we've now got a few more promotions in the mix. So let's see where that goes. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and I'll see you soon. Bye!